making sure there's a form of protection. And it's usually layers of things. So it could be rings, necklaces. It can be the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram. Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to my channel. I am Aradia Arcanum. Welcome to Arcanum's Dark Light. I am making this video to have on this channel. One, because I get a lot of questions from those who are beginners on this path of understanding the darker element of the occult, understanding how to work with demons and spirits and those spirits that are more on the darker side of things. And these questions come from people that can still be battling a little bit with Abrahamic religions that they have been brought up in. So I get a lot of questions about how do you begin? How do you know what to do? So I'm just going to share with you what my process looks like, what I have, at least at this time in my evolution and this time on my journey. This is what I do now. And this has come from experience, trial and error. So I just want to share a little bit about, what my process looks like, understanding of some of these things. So the first thing that you want to tell yourself or ask yourself is, what is it that you believe about these spirits? And I say this all the time. So it is my belief, my understanding, in my experience, that there are a lot of spirits out there, angels, demons, entities, beings, and some of them are created from being called upon for over a period of time. So you have this egregore, and I truly believe some are beings, entities, some are aliens. So until I have that understanding, I approach it via the psychological model, meaning I approach it as an archetype, especially if you understand anything about working with a quill pith or understanding what the purpose is for, some of the purpose at least is for working with these darker elements. So for me, I approach it as an archetype. And then after that relationship has been built, after I understand it, when I invoke it and understand it in relationship to what part of my psyche that this works with, because all of these archetypes have certain things that they correlate with. So it helps me understand the darker side of my psyche working with this darker being. So after that, after I have built this relationship, done the research, and invoked this spirit, at some point they may present themselves, and you develop this, you're guided. Your intuition tells you over time, after building this relationship, whether or not it helps you develop your own personal gnosis and understanding what that archetype is, if it's a being, or if your gnosis is telling you this is something more, or if it's just an archetype. But I go into it with starting out, unless I have been approached by the spirit or being or demon, unless I've been approached by it, this is for me when I take the active approach of wanting to work with a spirit, and I have, I'm new to it, so I don't understand its energy, so I go in with this as an archetype. But there are some that I know from them having presented themselves. If I don't know, I'll just put it like this. If I go into, working with a spirit and they're new, I approach it the psychological model. I approach it as an archetype. And the reason why I think this approach may be good for those that are newer is because it's not as scary, right? This can be scary just thinking about going into those darker places, right? Because when you think about the dark, it becomes something that may be scary because you can't see in the dark. So when you approach it as an archetype, it can kind of, take away some of that fear, and then you can go into it open and ready to learn and understand. And then from that understanding, you develop a better knowing of what it is. So that's my process when working with a entity or spirit that I have never worked with before. The next thing would be there's rituals and ceremonies and things that you do to invoke this energy. So I've used other invocations, I've used other rituals, but for the most part, I'll do my research and I draw upon what it is that someone else has created. But for the most part, I like to write up and create my own because I feel like it's more personal. I feel like it's coming from a place of what I understand this archetype is to me. So I just like to, and I'm not saying that you have to, but this is the way that I do it. And it kind of builds a better connection for me when working in to invoke that spirit. So after I do the research and to understand what this archetype is, I then know the things that it correlates with, what one may call upon this archetype for, and I incorporate all of those things into the invocation that I create. So the next thing you want to think about is protection. So before you invoke any of these beings, you want to make sure that protection is priority to you in your life overall, because throughout different magical systems, there's different ways that one may use to for as a form of protection. So for me, since I'm kind of eclectic, I make sure that whatever protection I do, it is done periodically throughout the home. I'm consistent with making sure there's a form of protection, and it's usually layers of things. So it could be rings, necklaces, it can be the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram. But these are layers of things that I do. And I think it's also important that if you are going down this path, to have your own spiritual team and connect with them, your ancestors, your spirits and guides, and the deities or entities that are daemons that are your matrons and patron gods and goddesses. So having your spiritual counsel, your spiritual team is another form of protection, because they send you warnings and they stop things from even making it to you. So having all of these things in place will help you not have to worry about when it comes time for you to invoke this spirit. You are properly prepared because you've done the work. You have fortified your place, your sacred space. You have fortified it consistently. So when you come into this realm and you work with the darker elements of things, you want to first and foremost find out what form of protection works best for you and employ that almost every day, but be consistent with it so you can have a fortified form of protection. I know it can seem very overwhelming for people that are newer on this path, especially newer in general. But when you are new and you're working with the darker elements, fear kind of takes over, because you hear all of these things spoken about. Oh, when I worked with this demon and they possessed me and took over. And then you hear things like, oh, when I worked with this demon, they caused this to happen in my life. So you all of those things can scare you, but I'm here to tell you these things can happen regardless, not just with demons. You could with angels and whatever it is that you work with. So having protection across the board is important. You have to go into it with the right state of mind first, because going into it with fear, anxiety, and having a troubled mind is not the right mind space to go into working with demonic entities specifically. So you want to first address that, right? And that is a form of protection. Because if your mind is not right, it leaves you open for certain spiritual attacks. So you want to build the confidence and find ways to remove the fear and go into this with feeling you are protected. Go into it as an archetype unless I know otherwise. I work on understanding it so that I can create the invocation. After I create the invocation, I then find the right time, because that's all part of the things that correlate with this archetype. I find the right time and all of those things. I build up to working with this archetype. And 9 times out of 10, when you do this, this is a part of the preparation. So you spend about, at least, you're going to spend more if you are doing the research on this archetype, but you want to spend at least a week. And when you are ready to do the invocation and call forth this spirit, you want to at least spend a week getting it together, thinking about what it is you're going to do, checking out the right time to do it. In this process, you are developing this like psychic link to this archetype, and it helps you to connect and contact this, because just like you're sending out the invite in your process of preparing for the invocation. The only caution that I have is make sure you do your research and knowing, because they have some demons that are not beginner friendly. And even for those that are not beginners, they kind of shy away from working with some of these demonic entities. But I would say do your research in knowing that, and then make sure you have your protections in place regardless of any invocation you may do. And also make sure your mind is right? You want to alleviate that anxiety. You want to alleviate, you want to go into this with a calm mind and without fear, a respectful level of fear, right? Don't go into it like, I got this. That's an overabundance of ego, and you don't want that. So you want a healthy level of fear and respect for what it is that you are calling forth. So my 2 cents and a bit of my process in how I commune and connect with spirits. And when I say spirits, I know I go back and forth. When I say spirits, I just mean anything otherworldly. So I'm talking about demons and entities. So I just categorize them as a spirit. So the other thing I want to talk about is, in my process, I have learned to never say never. Because I remember at one point, if you would have told me that I would be working with demonic entities, I would have said no, never. So I said I have to say, keep your mind open, because sometimes when you go through the process of invoking these energies and you don't make a connection, it could be because you have these preconceived ideas about what it is that's supposed to be happening. Everything is personal to you, and these spirits show up according to your level of understanding. So if you were brought up in the Abrahamic religion, you may have this preconceived idea of a demon showing up with horns and red, and that may be what it shows up for you, because this is what your image in your mind is. So it all depends on your level of understanding. So don't go into it and with expectation. I used to go through this like long, elaborate, which I think a lot of people do when they come into the world of the occult. You know, they want to experience the ceremony of it. And I do like that, but it's not all the time that I do that. I actually love the idea of ceremony, putting on the robes, because I feel like, for me at least, it brings in more power because I feel powerful with those elements incorporated into the ritual. So I do love the ceremony of it, but generally that is not what I do all the time. I go through the process as mentioned here in this video. That is the basic foundation of what it is that I do. This is just to share part of my process to maybe help someone that wants to start down this path. What path is that? The darker path. That is it for this video. Until the next one, I love you all, and into the shadows.